Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the weekly landscape update video I do here in Raleigh, North Carolina, Zone 7B, where Steph and I kind of show off some of the things that are looking pretty good in the garden. Here we are, it just flipped over the calendar to September, and things are still looking pretty good, really. We went through a period of time early to midsummer there where, you know, it was a little rough out here. We had to put a little more water on than we've had to put on. It was a dry spring, and then a super hot June. And then we were lucky here in the eastern part of North Carolina and have had some rain here or there, and the temperatures backed off from what others across the country have experienced. And so hasn't been terrible, although we've had to do some ongoing watering. But the garden is in pretty good shape, you know, considering, you know, the kind of year we've had. Things like the butterfly bush that was cut back not that long ago is flushed back out and looking great. The perennials along the front border, you know, coneflowers are done at this point, but we've got a mix of different things in here and some annuals that are still looking pretty good. The aster, the fall blooming aster, which the rabbit turned into a piece of artwork here, is starting to bloom, and you can see all the flower buds on it. I talk about this in the monthly video all the time about, you know, having fall blooming asters or hardy chrysanthemums. You know, a lot of the fall blooming perennials are pretty easy, and they just kind of sit in the background during the season, and then they show off at a time of year when other things are really starting to slow down. But a rabbit did do a number on this one. It'll be totally fine next year when it comes back. It'll be normal again. There's an agave that was put in a video earlier this season. This is one of the things about this garden in the last couple of years. We actually have some things in here that are going to get quite large in time, and what we've done is put a few, you know, a few perennials that we can control and annuals around them just to fill this space in the meantime, keep the ground covered, keep the water from running off the property, get some color, obviously, but eventually that agave will be, you know, will fill almost this entire space, and hopefully at that point, you know, throw up a 25-foot tall flower spike when that happens. But it's actually grown quite a bit, and what we've been doing is just, you can't see it right now, but we've been cutting a little space around it, so it's in good shape. This zinnia I haven't talked about. I've talked about a lot of the zinnias in the landscape, but this is the Profusion cherry zinnia, and man, is this one, it's a little more on the pink side now. They faded a bit, and I'll show you a couple other zinnias doing the same thing, but they're starting to lose a little color because the days are getting a little shorter. But this thing is just fantastic, and look how clean it is. You know what zinnias look like by this time of year typically, but these Profusions just keep on blooming and blooming. The few clematis that were put on the fence out here are still growing. There's a bud on this Henryi that will open in the next few days. Henryi just was one of those that keeps blooming, especially when it's a little bit cooler outside. This border on the right-hand side of the entryway going in, Salvia is looking great. Celosia's looking great. It's got bees on it overnight, always. And then I think this has turned out to be one of the best kind of layered spaces we have in the landscape, with the vinca down below here, and then the ornamental blueberry. This is a native blueberry. Blueberries are edible, but for me it's just an ornamental. It's a beautiful, just great contrast, color, texture. The nightlight Camellia has really filled in quite a bit. The Buddleia around the corner, the Clayera that's behind it, all of this stuff, you know, from right here down at the ground, just going up back here. I really like this layered look. It's going to require a little bit of pruning this winter because, you know, you can see how crowded this is. This is just such a small lot here in Raleigh that we're going to have to do a bit of, you know, a bit of control in the winter to have it look like this every year. But I know that Clayera back there will grow about 2 feet during the growing season, so I'll just cut it about 2 feet lower than I want to keep it, and I can do that for years in that space, even though that's a plant that wants to get quite a bit bigger than that. One of the perennial plant videos we did, this pineapple lily went in at that time. That was one that you know, Tony Avon, I think, originally named. It's that you can see the growth that's happened on it if you go back and, you know, we'll see that video. It was, you know, maybe a third of that volume of leaves and size Didn't get any flowers on it this year. It's well established though, so next year we should get flowers on that. And even if you didn't, look at the purple foliage, contrasting with the green. It looks great. The zinnias planted around it look really great. There's a Cedrus atlantica here called Sapphire Nymph, and this is another one. Again, I'm trying to make sure that it's not being damaged by the other things around it, because it's a permanent piece here, whereas the annuals are annuals, and the agapanthus that's behind it can be moved in the future as this thing gets a little bit of size on it. But in the meantime, again, trying to have a space where a heavy rain hits this spot. Water's not going anywhere. It's going to go right into the ground and store it. Caryopteris, which I've shown more than I would have ever shown a Caryopteris during the year this year, just because this thing's pretty much bloomed all summer long. It was weird how it was throwing out flowers very early in the season, but it's finally actually starting to come into real full flower now. There's a bee on it that just landed behind me. What a great color that blue is. It's that bluish purple color. I think we're another week and a half away from it really being just almost entirely this color. I've gotten several questions about updating the sterling moon begonia that is a hardy begonia here in zone 7, and I haven't shown it because it's taken more abuse than probably any plant in the landscape. It came up early. It went to sleep in the winter like it's supposed to do, and then it came up early in early March. And when it came up in early March 13th, we had a really nasty freeze that froze it to the ground. And I actually thought it was done. I thought it was dead. It came right back up. Maybe, I don't say right back up, but maybe a month later, we see it again. It's up again. At some point, some foot traffic, either we did it with a wheelbarrow or a deer came through here or holly or griffin or whatever. Something mowed it down again. And so, but it's here, and it's in a couple different spots. So the thing is, it's surviving. I'm hoping it'll go to sleep here for the winter and wake back up and be what it was when I originally planted it. But thus far, it's surviving our abuse. And another thing about this is, I think it would have had almost no issue with that early freeze and other issues if I hadn't planted it so late in the fall. I've talked about this a bunch. I'm planting, when you're planting something that's marginal or very, close to being marginal, September, October is probably not the best time to be putting it in the ground, and sometimes I don't follow my own advice. So this was planted like right before a freeze. So it was planted right before a freeze, came up, got another freeze, then whatever kind of foot traffic, but here it is. It's alive, and I think next spring it'll fill in this little pocket, which was our original plan for it.
Well, I'm back here in our annual bed that we created along the grass, taking a look at how it's progressed. It's starting to slow down. It still looks lovely, but I can tell that the fall weather's upon us, or starting to come to us, because it is starting to decline a bit. The Gomphrena is still doing well. Unfortunately, this is a nice bright accent in it. So it does give a lovely pop of color with those summer jewel salvias around it. In the back here, a lot of people have asked about this plant, and I'm torn by it, honestly, because it is so vigorous. If you have a spot where you want a very tall annual, it's for you for sure. I've cut it back like 2 or 3 times. It is called Flamingo purple, and it is gorgeous. The accent of the color of the foliage, and Celosia is a pollinator's dream as well. It really creates a gorgeous combination of colors in the back. It's just very vigorous, and so you have to keep it tamed a bit occasionally. One other plant that we haven't really talked about much, but is a lovely choice for pollinators, is Cuphea. We don't grow the Cuphea ourselves. Perhaps next year we'll try, but we usually get a few of them to put in planters and just in the landscape as well. This one is called Blackberry Sparkler. It's sort of understated, but again, the hummingbirds love it. So here's a few more Cuphea that we have in the landscape. This one right here we got in 6-packs from big bloomers. It tends to grow a little shorter, so if you want something that's not quite so tall, this is a good choice. We have it in several areas in the landscape. We have behind it one called Hummingbird Lunch. It's kind of a nice accent with that salvia, honestly. Hummingbirds just absolutely love it. We have 2 others that I want to show you that I think are just extraordinary. Last year we had a Cuphea called Bat Face. This one here is called Torpedo, and it looks quite similar to the Bat Face one. It's just remarkable how vibrant those reds and purples are. This last Cuphea is called Sriracha Rose. We had it last year as well. Such a beautiful color in combination with the pentas and the angelonia. Oddly enough, this Cuphea showed up seeding itself in the vegetable garden. So I think we did have it last year, and it decided to travel over across the landscape. But certainly, if you're going to have something seed, this one isn't such a bad idea. It's just so beautiful.
I told someone in a consultation the other day that I would show off my Selaginella or Arborvitae fern. They were concerned about theirs had turned brown the first season, or had maybe 50% of the plant was brown, and I was just kind of assuring them that it's kind of a normal thing. This plant goes in the ground. It takes a little while for most, for lots of plants to adjust, but this one did the exact same thing last year during the summertime. I really thought it was going to decline and just die, and then when it started to grow this spring, it really came up and it's been beautiful here all season. I would imagine it's gonna take whatever space it can in here. Obviously this hydrangea that I'm holding back is gonna get bigger. It probably will eventually have to move to the bed edge rather than be back here in the bed. But in the meantime, it's got its space. It's covering the ground. Again, this is part of the plan here, is to keep the ground covered. Then we don't get as many, pesky weeds growing everywhere while we wait for some of these shrubs to fill in the landscape.
I'm over here near the shed. I want to talk about a few of the plants that are here. Wanted to just point out again the Dragon Prince Cryptomeria. We planted that it might have been the first plant or the second plant that went in this landscape, period. It's a beautiful, compact evergreen. Makes a great accent in the corner here. And around it we have things like Cucurella. We've got a wonderful sage that we actually planted, did by seed. The culinary rosemary in the back here. And then we have Terenia all around. Terenia is one of my absolute favorite annuals in a semi-shade, fairly deep shade situation. They bloom obviously a little more in the semi-shade, but they're so beautiful, and to me they're a really happy annual. I didn't know what Terenia was until Jim and I worked at a garden center together. I didn't know what a Jim was either until I worked at a garden center with him either. But the Terenia here, to me, it just looks so happy. It's like singing with their little faces wide open. They're great with the pollinators as well, and it's just a beautiful addition to a semi-shade landscape.
Last week or the week before, I showed October Magic Orchid Camellia. It's a Camellia sasanqua that's over there by the porch, and a palm that was planted into the ground. This is October Magic Ruby. This one's been in the ground for 2 years. You can see its growth habit is kind of layered and flat rather than being, it does have a few vertical pieces on it, which would be easy to take off, but this one it stays super compact. It's perfect for this little back path. Back here is really just starting to swell its flower buds right now. We won't see these flower until mid to late October, but there's just absolutely tons of flower buds swelling on it now. Ruby is an almost red. It could be described as a really, really, really dark pink or a red. It has a double flower. It's absolutely one of my favorites. One of the things that's interesting about being in horticulture for 35 years is I look forward to these fall blooming things, like the Farfugium is over here to the right of it. It's going to bloom in the next few weeks. And because it was, by the time I got to this time of year, we had just run ourselves ragged from, the first of February, when things are coming in and you're starting to fill pots and, you know, up until this moment. And these buds start to swell in these camellias, and you know a break is coming. And so I think that's one of the things you'll see in horticulture, that folks in the South are really drawn to these fall blooming things, because it kind of means that we get to slow down at some point. So what's one of your favorite, if you have fall blooming things? We pointed out the aster in the front, of course, mums, hardy mums, or you know, the mums that you buy off the shelf at the garden centers, or is it, if you're in the South, is it camellias or farfugium? Let us know one of your favorite things that tend to bloom really late summer or into the fall. Thanks for watching.